Morning, everybody. It's Tactard Ted. It is Saturday, 24th of September, 2022. So I got a little bored. I did something stupid. I actually watched the news the other day, and I was absolutely shocked. These guys are snorting copium, smoking copium, injecting copium. I don't know what they're doing, but these folks are coping like there is no tomorrow by putting out just tons of lies about the special military operation in Ukraine. And the biggest lie is that Russia is losing. And this mobilization, it proves that Russia has failed. No, the special military operation was an absolute success. They demilitarized Ukraine. They destroyed the Ukrainian army that existed on 24th of February 2022. Tanks that the Ukrainians had at the beginning of the war, gone. Artillery that they had at the beginning of the war, gone. The Air Force they had at the beginning of the war, gone. Their Navy, gone. That's what we don't talk about. It's interesting. We make a big deal about the Moskva being sunk, but we don't talk about the fact that Ukrainians don't have a fucking Navy. They don't have a fucking Air Force. No, we're not going to talk about that. No, Russia's a failure. No, hang on a second. Russia absolutely succeeded in demilitarizing Ukraine. But what they couldn't expect is that the rest of the world, aka just a few countries, really, when you get down to it, the EU and the United States, decided that they were going to pump in billions with a B of weapons, armored vehicles, all sorts of ammunition and other things into Ukraine, because the Ukrainian army ceased to exist. And now we have basically a half-assed NATO force. And why do I say it's half-assed? Well, I'll tell you why it's half-assed. It's half-assed because all the experience that NATO built into the Ukrainian army, all the training, all that special aid that we gave them is gone. Look, I realize a lot of you folks think that we're still in medieval times, where you just take a guy, you put him in a uniform, give him a weapon, and he's a soldier. Training a soldier takes more than just a few weeks. I will tell you, infantry, you're an infantryman, you're basic foot soldier. Your basic training is 8 weeks, and your advanced individual training is anywhere 4 to 6 weeks. And that's for a grunt, you know, the guys they make fun of, as being crayon eaters, as being low information, low intelligence individuals, which I'm happy to be one. I was told, I remember in the military, I was told that my scores were high enough in the ASVAB that they could give me anything I wanted. And I said, I want to do something in the military I can't do anywhere else. So they taught me how to kill people and blow shit up. So I can't do that anywhere else, not without getting in trouble. So the recruiter didn't really lie to me, but he lied to me, but not about what I'd be doing. Anyhow, all those NCOs, all those experienced officers, gone. The officer corps of the Ukrainian army's been decimated. The NCOs are now either officers or dead. More likely the latter. Because unlike the army that existed before, where leaders lead, you don't lead from behind. You can easily show it with a chain or a piece of rope. You can drag that piece of rope along and it's fine, but if you push it from behind, it just coils up and gets all cattywampus on you. It doesn't work. But I digress. The Ukrainian army, over 60,000 dead. 60,000 dead. And what's interesting is people say, oh, well, those numbers aren't realistic. Well, yeah, they are realistic. If you go with the Ukrainian estimate, or that they're losing 100 to 200 people a day, and you go with the higher estimate, because I believe they're probably not being honest, because they haven't been honest with a whole lot, except for the Ghost of Kiev. That was absolutely true. Bullshit. Or those guys who died on Snake Island day one. That was, oh, wait a minute, that was bullshit too? Oh, shit. Anyhow, they're saying they're losing, if you go with the 200 troops a day dead, and that doesn't add up for the spikes like in the Kherson offensive or the Kharkov offensive where their casualties went off the chart, you end up with from late February to right about now, you'll end up with 50,000. So the differences are only off by about 11,000, and that can be easily explained with the spikes during some of their propaganda publicity stunt offensives that just don't gain a whole lot of ground, or they gain ground but they don't do any sufficient damage to the Russians. The Russian game here is not ground. It is to inflict casualties. It is to demilitarize the Ukrainian army, and by destroying the army that existed, and I'm seriously, they destroyed it. They removed the weapons. They removed stockpiles of ammunition. They defeated that army. That army ceased to exist. And now what you have is this hybrid NATO army of NATO equipment and extremely poorly trained Ukrainian conscripts. And oh yes, they're sending Ukrainian soldiers to the UK to receive was it 2-3 weeks of training? I mean, that's ridiculous, man. We didn't even know how to march well in 3 weeks. And well, marching doesn't have anything to do with firing a gun. No, but most of what these guys do in their trainings not having a whole lot to do with firing their weapon. And how do we know this? Well, we know this because a couple of the guys who received their training in the UK have decided to throw down their guns and go live in captivity of the DPR or the LNR, basically Russian captivity, rather than get bloated up by Russian guys on the battlefield. So yeah, you've got guys who already went through all this great training that NATO is supposed to be giving, already surrendering, already saying it was not adequate at all. Now, I will also say that, you know, most training for combat, for real war, is not adequate. In fact, most of the training you get is not even adequate for overseas security issues. It's just not. And you have to get used to that. But the one thing that you can say is the Russians were effective, and they did destroy that army. And the fact that the West has pumped in billions of dollars, well, that changed the game a little bit. So if I can't destroy with what I got, we're simply going to mobilize. The West changed the game. They changed it by putting in all this equipment and running a pipeline where we're right now overextending ourselves about taking weapons out of our own arsenal to give to Ukraine. The West adjusted. They gave Ukraine a bunch of new toys that keep falling into Russian hands or getting blown up as soon as they hit the battlefield. And now the Russians are adapting. They've decided that they're going to call up more manpower. Now, it's amazing to me that we're making this huge deal about a targeted mobilization of Russian reservists. Let that sink in, what I just said. Targeted mobilization. In other words, they're picking the people they want to mobilize. And they're reservists. They're people with combat experience for the most part, or technical skills they need. These aren't simple picking people off the street and putting them in uniform. Everyone knows this, including the Russian public. And there are tons of videos out there of people queuing up in a nice line to go join or become part of the Russian military. And it's just not these reservists. There are people showing up, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go. Take me. These aren't people that have been called up in some cases. In some cases, they're people who want to volunteer, who do have combat experience, whose name didn't end up on the list. And they're older, a little more grayer. Waistline's maybe a little bigger than they want it to be. But those guys are going, and they're going to serve. Now, the Ukrainians are amazed because Ukrainians think that to be drafted, you need to be caught on the street by a draft officer and told to show up or go to jail. And you show up, you might get to fire 10 rounds out of your weapon and thrown to the front. The Ukrainians are on their 7th or 8th wave of mobilization. This is the first mobilization that Russia's had for this war. And everybody seems to be upset about that the Russians are having a mobilization while the Ukrainians are on 7th or 8th mobilization. But nobody's talking about something that really kind of bugs me. Starting next week, in fact, 1 week from today, I believe, the Ukrainians are going to start drafting women. It's already been approved. It was approved months ago. I think that when they approved it, they didn't expect the war to last this long. But no, next Saturday, the Ukrainians are going to start handing out draft notices to women. Kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, the Ukrainians are winning so greatly that they're being so inclusive, they're bringing women in. And not that I'm downing women in combat. But I don't recall the great winners of any war having to take their mothers and daughters and force them into uniform. Now, you can talk about liberation, equal rights, all that. Fine. Talk about whatever you want. And yes, I'm old school. Combat arms is a man's game. Now, have there been exceptional women warriors? Yeah, Boudica, Joan of Arc, Ludmila Pavlichenko. Yeah, there have been exceptional women warriors. But as far as being drafted, we don't do that. You just don't do that. If women want to serve, let them volunteer. If not, it's, war is a sin. And destroying the cream of your young male generation coming up, that's sinful. Do you know what's even more sinful? Destroying the mothers of the next generation. Not giving a chance for the population to catch back up. And I know that's probably a pretty sexist thing to say, but you need the women, folks. Men, let's be realistic about biology. Men will go out, they can have a bunch of kids, but they need women to do it. And how you put this? Monogamy, not necessarily a big deal with that. But that's the reality of the world. That's the reality of biology. That's the reality of civilization. We're all bastards or come from bastards from one degree or another. But nobody's complaining, nobody's crying about a mobilization of Ukrainian women that is very much getting ready to happen. Now the Russians are going to take these 300,000 and they're going to push them probably into rear area security at first. They're going to do the jobs of securing cities or securing crossroads or doing rear area stuff, rear echelon jobs. What that's going to do is that's going to free up maybe 100,000 real killers, guys who are gods of war, guys who know how to do their job and do their job well. And that's going to boost the number of infantry, because right now a lot of their infantry are getting used in rear area security. And they'll take these older dudes who know what they're doing, know how to be soldiers, know how to fight. It isn't going to take long to re-blue these guys. I'm hearing people saying 2 to 3 months. I don't think it's going to take that long. I just don't think it's going to take that long at all. Now, I may be naive, but I have a feeling, especially if you're getting top of the line individuals, guys with good combat experience, guys who are on the top of their game. This is less than 1% of the pool that Russia has to choose from the reservists. Less than 1%. They're pretty picky. They can afford to be picky and take the best. If you get the best and brightest of that reserve pool, shove them forward, you've got guys that you're probably not going to have to do a lot of rebluing or retraining to. Maybe they might need a little bit of familiarization with the AK-12, which, hey, it's an AK. Other than having a 2-shot burst, it is pretty much the same AK that they have been issuing since 1947. Okay, there's not a ton of difference for this weapon. Might have to teach them a little bit about how to put their gear together and wear their new Molly gear if they had an older version of gear. Or I just might be off the mark too. The Molly gear's been around for a while. I'm a dinosaur. I will tell you, I still remember when the Soviets had a really, really crappy belt that was rubberized canvas. I still remember these things. And of course, what you got to remember, folks, is, and I've said this before, the Russian Federation Army of today is not the Soviet Army of yesterday. And there's a lot of old Cold Warriors. There's a lot of dinosaurs like me who grew up with the Soviets, and they haven't been able to evolve. They haven't been able to understand that army no longer exists. The army that we were trained to fight is gone. What we have is what we have now. We have the new reality, the Russian Federation Army. And they have defeated that Ukrainian army which they set out to fight. Now this new bastardized hybrid NATO thing, which, to be honest, guys, I'm really kind of upset because you're giving the Ukrainians, and this is just from a historian nutjob point of view, you're giving these poorly trained Ukrainian troops, these conscripts, you're giving them NATO weaponry that they don't know how to use. So you're not really going to see the impact of NATO weapons versus Russian weapons. And, I know maybe that sounds like a little bit of an excuse coming from me. I'm an American first, and I like to believe in built-in America, but you never really know about it until you see it tested. And this is a way to test this equipment and get this equipment used in combat without risking American lives. Unfortunately, the technical expertise in employing this stuff is not there. So you can talk anything you want about, and there'll be people who can just make tons of excuses about what's going on, and tons of excuses about why this didn't work and why that didn't work and everything else. But I will tell you guys, if you believe the outcome of this war is in doubt, you're mistaken. And anyone who thinks that this ends before Russia wants it to end, you're crazy. This will end when Russia is good and ready, and when Ukraine gives up all the demands that Russia will have. And I'm not telling you that the demands are set in stone. This could have been ended back in April. And with Western interference, Zelensky didn't end it. Boris Johnson went to Kiev and told Zelensky, you're not going to take this deal. And Zelensky was this close to signing off with the Russians. And now, hey, it's only been, 20, 30,000 Ukrainian dead since then. I mean, that's not much to have on your hands now, is it, Boris? But they keep screwing around with this thing, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And we're all seeing it go to hell. And when the Russians decide this thing is over, it'll be over. The Ukrainians aren't going to have much to say about it. The West isn't really going to have much to say about it when it finally happens. And you need to be prepared for that, because there are going to be a lot of you folks that are going to be shocked at how rapidly this thing falls apart. And it's not going to be like it was in World War II, where we see these armies marching across everything and it's just going to massively collapse. And it's going to come very unexpectedly. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. But what I'm trying to tell you folks, if you're getting your news from a media that lied to you about COVID, about Russian collusion, about Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. We all should be dead because if you didn't get your vaccination or you didn't wear a mask religiously, 2 masks, 3 masks, whatever, triple, quadruple boosted, you're dead. You're not even watching this because you're dead. The media lies to you, folks, and the media has gotten really bad. The media that we have today and the big tech that helps it along. Joseph Goebbels in the Nazi Germany would be just pleased as punch to have this. Y'all take care and have a good weekend. Bye.